A little background I thought we could start off with just to kind of shape the conversation, and I appreciate the speakers earlier. They touched on a number of technology concerns that we have and kind of set the conditions for us. Focuses that we have in TechDOT, things we're working on, Commissioner Vandergriff actually has been leading this effort with us, is developing our goals and objectives and further refining those as we move into our next era. And some of those are congestion, safety, customer service, asset preservation, as well as system performance. And I think there's technology solutions or technology enhancements or innovations that can address many of those, and we'll kind of touch on those. As was mentioned this morning, we're about to have our 100th year anniversary in 2017. We showed a slide at some point about the millennials and the bump in numbers of people in the millennial generation. But what I found striking was what was not on there, and that is the next group. And just to kind of bring it home, the children that were born in the year 2000 will be 17 next year. So that means they're getting driver's licenses, if they don't already have hardship licenses in Texas, next year or this year. So it's not just the millennials anymore. The millennials are already 20 and 30 years old, just in case you didn't know that. And that next generation, whatever they will be called, is already growing up. And those are the people that we're building this system for, the millennials and them. And we're going to be the late age users, in my case, being over 50. The population is projected by a number of people to increase and almost double by the year 2050. We've already heard this afternoon about increasing freight throughput, both from Mexico and through our seaports, and the impacts of the Panama Canal expansion, as well as other efforts. Something I try to tell people, or a mantra that I have, is that technology and innovation isn't just about information technology and about new materials being developed at TechDOT. It's also about applying new ideas, methods, or products. And those may sometimes be scientific ones, but not always. And it's to improve people's lives, ultimately, for practical purposes. It's not about doing technology for technology's sake. And in the case of TechDOT, we apply that into our operations, to our infrastructure, to our maintenance, to our materials, and to our public service, however we engage and support the public. There is a House interim charge that involves examining innovative technology, transportation solutions, and we will be, I believe, over at the House a number of times in the next couple of years, answering questions and helping them shape legislation in relation to that. And as I mentioned, we don't think about technology and innovation just for its own sake. Whatever we do, whatever we try to do at TechDOT and implement at TechDOT, we recognize we have a responsibility and accountability to the public, that it has to be safe, it has to be secure, that we don't do it in a sense that it's so utilitarian that there's no pleasure involved in the solutions that we deliver, and that we think about things. We have responsible or reasonable skepticism when we talk about innovation, and we consider the impacts of different types of weather, environments, how will the power actually be delivered, where's the original source, how does it impact people's lives? I mean, all the way down to, we talk about employing bicycles in cities anymore, but the workplace may have to change if we do that, because people aren't going to, typically in my experience, bike to work in Texas in the summer in a suit. So how do we think about those things, and how does it change the way we do our daily lives and our daily work? Okay, with that, then I'm going to stop talking and turn all the rest of the questions over to the panel. And I say this, I may direct some specific to one member, but I feel free to chime in on any particular question if you feel that there's something valuable that we can take back to Texas and how we address these things in Texas. So the first question, and it's the theme of the conference, and I ask this of each one of you, and I'll start with Commissioner Vandergriff, is what does connectivity or connectedness mean to you in relation to technology and transportation?
Well, I think it's an evolving term at this point, quite frankly. Connectivity used to mean, and still does in terms of road infrastructure, to connect from point A to point B, typically between major urban corridors. But when you talk about connectivity in terms of a technology play, it's different. I think we're going to see we can't just build our way out of a congestion problem. We can probably address today's conditions, but the next generation of conditions will have to evolve into a smarter solution. And I know there's been some things out there that have tried to address that, in the most prominent probably being a managed lane scenario in urban corridors. So we're going to have to evolve that decision on connectivity. And then in addition, I know what I don't know, but I know what I do know too, in the sense of the cars that go on our road. There are a number, probably the greatest since we got the car mass-produced 100 years ago, starting at Ford. We have a number of major disruptors out there in the market that are changing the way that we think and act with respect to transportation. A year or so ago, year and a half, we probably made a major mistake of accidentally featuring hovercrafts and jetpacks in a presentation to the commission, and the reaction was not real good to that. But the point the department had was, I think, strong, which was we need to think about what's transportation going to be like in the future. And we already know that ride-sharing companies are out there, that the buying habits of the public are going to change, and the buying processes they go through are going to change, which is in turn going to dictate driverless cars, for example, electric vehicles, if they ever do get to the battery where it's smaller and can go a longer distance, which I'm confident one or multiple manufacturers will do, then we're going to have to rethink particularly strong about how we actually fund transportation at its core level. So connectivity means many things to me, but most importantly, it is looking at the future and where we need to be 3 steps ahead instead of just sitting on today's definition of connectivity.
Eric?
Yeah, so I guess not surprisingly, I'll probably be a little bit more vehicle-centric than the panelists here, because that's what we do at General Motors. But you know, if you think about connectivity, I think you are seeing a definite evolution, but it's occurring very quickly. I agree with Commissioner Vandegrift that this is just the very beginning of an unprecedented period of innovation for the automobile industry. And we're going to see more change in our industry in the next 5 years than we've seen in the last 100 years. So although we can look at kind of the general trends, I think that there are going to be innovations that surprise and delight us all along the way. Things that we've never even thought of will occur and will make all of our lives better. So in terms of the connectivity, if you think in terms of where we've been or where we are maybe right now, we are seeing the vehicle connectivity, connecting a person to the vehicle, basically trying to bring the vehicle into the digital life of the person, mainly through infotainment or navigation systems, those kind of things that can be used and linked to smartphones, those technologies. GM brought out last year our 4G LTE platform, and we've now begun a broad-scale deployment across almost our entire fleet of that. We've got almost 1.4 million vehicles on that platform on the road today. And that is the beginning of it, but that pipe into the vehicle, if you will, creates the opportunity for a lot more interaction. And I think we're going to begin to see that. We're going to be able to provide our customers with real-time diagnostics about the status of their vehicle, what's going on, so that they can keep the vehicle maintained and serviced so that breakdowns don't occur. And we're also moving into an era of the sensor systems in the vehicle communicating with the vehicle and the driver. You know, we've done this tremendous pivot that we're in right now. For 40 years, we've built vehicles to basically make them survivable when a crash occurs, because we know there's a likelihood that people will be in a vehicle crash over their lives. And so we've done that. We've put in airbags and seat belts and crumple zones. But now we're building vehicles that avoid crashes entirely. And if you think about the ripple effects of that, less congestion, less damage, lives saved, it has an incredible ripple effect. And so we're going to see that evolution. I think the next big thing is vehicles being able to talk to each other and to the infrastructure, vehicle-to-vehicle technology, vehicle-to-infrastructure technology. We expect that to be occurring within the next 5 years. GM is actually going to put vehicle-to-vehicle technology in a production Cadillac beginning next year. And then, so once that starts to occur, then you're on the road to autonomous driving vehicles, which are kind of connected vehicles on steroids, vehicles that where you take the human driver element out of the equation. We know that well over 90% of the crashes on the road today are the result of human error, and we know that we can build safer and better vehicles if we can relieve the human being of various aspects of the driving task. If you had heard me talk last week, I would have told you that we viewed that as maybe a long-term evolutionary process. But as of yesterday, I will tell you that that's coming a lot quicker than we ever imagined that it would be. So, this is going to be an era of unprecedented change, and things are going to happen a lot quicker as we go forward.
Caroline.
This is really a period of revolutionary change. If you look at what the smartphone did in just a decade to change the way we communicate, the way we shop, the way we entertain ourselves, that happened in a decade. And we are on the cusp of that type of revolutionary change by the Internet of Things. They say, 50 million devices by 2020. That's going to give us a whole new realm of data that allows us to improve the way we live, improve the way we interact with one another, increase productivity. It really is going to be revolutionary change. TechDOT is an association of technology companies, and we work on the advocacy side of this, and we're really focused on what do the regulatory frameworks need to look like to incentivize this revolutionary change and to pave the way for Texas to lead on that. So, for us, it's, Mr. Larson talked about how this was going to happen. It is happening, and what do we need to do here in Texas to make sure Texas can lead on that? Which is a perfect segue to my friend, Representative Gonzalez.
Well, first I'll start by saying I realize I sit here between you guys and happy hour, so I will try to be as concise as possible. Ditto to everything they just said, because they're spot on, and they took all my talking points. But let me introduce you maybe a different perspective of connectivity that I look at it from an appropriator standpoint. It's more of a communications. I've sat here for most of the day and listened to some phenomenal speakers talk about everything that we're going to talk about with rail and multimodal and things like that, ports. But honestly, the connectivity for me is between stakeholders, between people, between the legislature, between the agencies. We need some more conversations between us. There's a lot that I've learned here today, and there's a lot of gaps I would like to fill with some information here in the next few minutes. But the technology is changing so quickly, and it's so fast. Unfortunately for us in Texas, I guess there are pros and cons, if you will. Meeting 5 months every 2 years. When it comes to technology, we're already behind, right? So say we have a phenomenal idea today that we're going to discuss, and I dropped that in the grease January of 2017. It's effective when? September of 2017? How much is that going to change in the year and a half that we just sit here? These are the kind of questions that I think in Texas kind of put us behind the ball a little bit on technology in general, is because we don't move quickly in the government side as technology does. And so the connectivity for us has to be much more immediate and much more quickly done, because we're behind the 8 ball on time. And so I would invite the people I've spoken here today and myself. I'm available, I'm here, I live here to continue this dialogue, because it's not inexpensive. Technology is fantastic, but there's an upfront cost to a whole lot of this. We do have some P3s that we work on that I'm a huge fan of. There's some opportunities out there to continue to grow on what we've already created. We just need to move quickly on some of this, because we're getting behind the ball.
Well, let's continue on an area you touched on. We've talked before, it's not, TechDOT focuses a lot on developing our road and our infrastructure related to that, but you have a number of concerns in other components of the transportation system and its impact on freight and technology areas related to those. And what are your thoughts as it relates to those?
Well, I think in Texas, we've been conditioned for a very long time that as we talk about transportation, we talk about asphalt. And it's asphalt and asphalt, and it's more roads. I think that the answer lies in a bigger scope of plans. You know, TechDOT does some incredible work when it comes to our ports and to our waterway systems. They do some incredible work when it comes to the air and to our airports, and then, of course, rail. And I think the answer doesn't just lie in the technology of a vehicle or in the technology of asphalt or how we build these things. I think the answer lies somewhere in that it's all of the above. What can I do to ease congestion on highways if we are going through the aforementioned Port Panama Canal up through the Gulf of Mexico and dropping off product there? What if we're importing, exporting out of our ports in Texas rather than driving all the way across? I mean, these are the things that I'm looking at. Once we get to the ports, and we've heard some ports people talk today, does the infrastructure exist? The connectivity between the port itself and 10 and 35 and 20, how is that going to work? There's a lot of questions we have revolving how is this going to look exactly, but I want to expand the conversation to be more than just asphalt, because it is rail and it is water and it is air as well, all working together. And as a member of the Sunset Commission, we've already had a very lengthy conversation with Ken Levine over at Sunset, and I've asked them to really look into a multimodal solution on how we use rail, water, and air to complement our tremendous efforts in asphalt, by the way. We've done some incredible things. Previous panelists spoke about all the propositions that are passed and how we're paying for things, and that's wonderful. But I still think the other modes of transportation need some attention from us because they're all going to work together.
And it's about interconnectivity in relation to those modes as well.
Absolutely.
Commissioner.
Echo the representative's comments in a couple of ways, and I agree with them. From the Commission's perspective, personal perspective, I should say, not the Commission's, there are a couple of concerns that I have that relate to this. The first is, I've said, and probably many people in this room have heard me say this at various speeches, that I know that a major interchange costs us $200 million, and if it's at a major interchange that we're spending $200 million in, it probably does increase mobility and relieve some congestion, but it doesn't really add to the economic development because that area is more than likely built up. But on the other hand, if we had the ability and took $200 million and that same $200 million and dredged or helped dredge all the ports along Texas to make them deep water to accommodate those Panama Canal barges, what kind of economic lift would that give to us? And I think that's important when we talk about connectivity. The second, and I don't think it's a secret to many people in this room, that I have been, it's different from being supportive of the high-speed rail effort from the standpoint of funding it. I certainly don't expect us to do that. But you have an effort that's a private sector effort that has to go through a lot of rural areas, and that's a big challenge for them. But I've encouraged that we give them the opportunity to fail, meaning if they can make the thing work and manage to overcome the objections in the central part of Texas, which is a tall order, then you will have a private sector venture, $10 to $15 billion investment perhaps, that will connect Houston and Dallas. And I think that today we're not a rail state, but that could be a catalyst that would really very much accelerate that growth, particularly in the metropolitan areas of Houston and Dallas. And I do know that my friends to the west in Fort Worth will not rest if that happens until they are connected as well, because of the Dallas-Fort Worth friendly rivalry that exists there. And I think certainly San Antonio and Austin could play in that too. So you see two of the topics that the representative touched on that I think are very much at the forefront. If those are issues that we do tackle someday, they could see some major changes in infrastructure investment in Texas.
Let's follow up on that. And in relation to innovation and technology, and you've touched on it, I mean, we have several stakeholders. It's not just the state and TechDOT, it's the cities, it's the counties, and all the elements that support them. How can they better team with us, or what role do you see them playing in providing innovative solutions and providing technology to the overall system? Because we can't do it all on our own. And
I think that we're going to have to create a better sense of partnership, and some of that partnership is financial on the standpoint of the cities and the counties, working with TechDOT and leveraging the money that we have together to make sure that we're connected together, that their city street and county street responsibility is in congruence with ours. So I think part of it is the traditional structure. And the other part going forward is, again, we have to be prepared for how the cars are going to perform on the roads in the future. And I have it often said to me that we don't need to do much in Texas because we're Texas and people are going to come here. And manufacturers want to be here. Google wants to have its test track here, for example. General Motors is tremendously expanding its, it's not really talked about much, but they're going to put another 3,000 plus people here, and many of them right here in Austin, in the tech center. And this will be the center of the world for Toyota North America operations in Texas. Those are fantastic things. Texas is a great economy, and it's a low regulatory state. It's a high business, pro-business state. But having said that, that doesn't mean we're ready for the technology that they could develop and bring, and that's the concern I have. And that's where I would hope that with the combination of the manufacturer interest in the cities and the counties, that we can invest the time and resources from the state's perspective to be ready for that explosion of business when it comes.
A little shameless plug, it was mentioned yesterday by our Federal Highways representative, Mr. Alonzi, that Texas is one of the only 2 or 3 states that does not have a state innovation council in its transportation area, and it's something that Federal Highways has been working on for quite some time, and we've been in the last year working with them to establish ours, and we'll be doing that, and a part of that will be reaching out to this community to be involved in helping us decide and determine which research projects make it all the way to implementation, what best practices do we use from other states, and then again, how do we engage industry and our other partners in bringing new innovations to the state. So I'm looking forward to it, and I hope we can soon announce its readiness. So in relation to that, I'll hit Commissioner Vandegrift one last time, because he's been working with me quite a bit on goal areas and our mission and values and vision, and a lot of what we think about in the future is related to those, how we set the course and chart our strategy towards them. And some of our goals, as I mentioned, focus on customer service and safety and congestion, asset preservation and system performance. And just, are there any specific areas or technologies that you already are aware of? We've mentioned autonomous vehicles, but other ones that you're concerned about, or that as we work towards these goals that you have in mind for us to focus on?
Well, I'm confident that if given the proper support, that the staff of TechDOT can manage a lot of these expectations. And so my concern, I guess, would be more in a global sense of just making sure we have the proper support for it. And for example, all of you in the audience, for the most part, you're involved in the design and the planning and the development and the maintenance of the road system of the state of Texas. And so I understand that that's the major focus. That's how folks put bread on the table. But at the same time, I think it's important and incumbent upon all of us in this audience, as we're talking about partnerships, to help TechDOT and help the state and the leadership here to recognize the importance of being prepared as we go forward. We've got great partners such as TTI, for example, and many others that really are in tune with the technology needs and assessments going on in other states. So we have to capture that and support the department in its effort. There will be some stumbles with that. I mentioned obviously putting pictures up about hovercrafts and space packs. Well, that's a stumble, but we still have to continue to poke and move forward going on it.
Okay, shifting focus to Harry and what's going on at GM. Well, you mentioned some of your developments were with respect to autonomous and connected vehicles, but I think it's time you should tell the audience what's going on with Lyft, what was announced yesterday. I know we kind of spoiled it a little bit earlier, but...
Well, I think, one of the things I think we all have to be prepared to do, and this certainly includes us at General Motors, is when you have this kind of potential explosive technological change, transformation of an industry, you have to be prepared to challenge established models. And we believe that there is a place for kind of an urban ride-sharing model in our industry. And obviously, we're willing to invest in that future, as well as in just manufacturing cars for owners. I think that eventually Both of those models will coexist for as far out into the future as we can see. But we want to play in both of those worlds. And I think, that's kind of, I think, where we are, all of us in this room. And we have to be ready and willing to challenge established models, many of which have been in place for a long time. But we have to challenge that thinking, and we have to be open to new ideas and new ways to do things.
I want to add to that. Transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft are providing a great public service in cities. They're in 200 cities across the country. They've given 100 million rides in the last 18 months. And this is really a good public safety effort, trying to get good, safe rides for people in cities like Austin and San Antonio, Dallas, and Houston. They're unfortunately facing some regulatory challenges when they're coming up against an entrenched monopoly. So this is one of those issues where consumers have spoken up, the market has spoken up. They really enjoy the services that transportation network companies are providing, getting less cars on the road, getting safe rides, and doing a great work. I'd love to see that GM has partnered with Lyft on this.
And it's not just social driving solutions, but there's other social mapping solutions, and Ride Scout's been here before. I mean, there's a number of opportunities in that arena.
Well, and in a lot of states, they're pioneering carpooling as well. They have new features on their technology where you can split rides, so really increasing carpooling as well.
Darren, if I can jump in and say one more thing to hone in on this point. It's because business is going to be done in Texas, because of the great environment, that we're going to experience rapid change we're already seeing it in the ride-sharing business or the transportation service networks, but we're going to see that in the retailing of vehicles, if not directly in the models of retailing, the way they retail at least, and it's going to be, we're at the epicenter of it, and that's going to then change also what's on the roads that all of you are designing, building, and maintaining. And it's important that we stay up with that.
I'll jump in on this one too, because I think from a legislature standpoint, and we've had this conversation many times at tech conferences, from our standpoint, I want the state to get out of the way. I need private companies to innovate and create and research and design and do what they do, and to provide all this wonderful technology out there. I don't need to define things that have yet to be defined. I don't need to get in the way of stifling this incredible innovation. There are some brilliant people out there doing some incredible things. The state needs to allow that to happen. We need to watch this grow, use them as our partners in this, and understand that at the end of the day, you heard it several times in a previous panel, we're all in this together. And whether it's a public-private partnership, whether it's a public-public partnership, to answer your question earlier about the counties and cities, because we're all in this together, there are some incredible opportunities as long as we don't stifle that in the budget, as long as we don't stifle that in our policy making. You'll see one thing we had in the TechDOT budget, for instance. We were very clear, sometimes on closer votes than others, but we were very clear to make sure that all options exist. Maybe I like them, maybe I don't. Maybe one city likes them, maybe one city doesn't. But they're going to exist, because I need to make certain that in this 1.5 year, 2-year lag that we have, that our options are available so that if something comes up, if something presents itself, that we're ready to go. I don't want to artificially limit what our options are for a certain community. So we made sure from a policy standpoint and from a budget standpoint that we did not limit our ability to jump in on a new technology that we're going to find. I think that was an important process. It was a very, it's a lot of conversation about that during session, but ultimately, I need options. I need options. And these options as we know them today are changing. To have a conversation about a technology here or there 2 years, 4 years ago, 6 years ago is constantly evolving. That's the world we live in with these incredible things that these gentlemen are producing for us. Then let it happen. And make sure that we foster an environment that allows the public sector to do what they do, which is to create, innovate, and get these jobs going for us that we can then partner with to make certain that we can address these transportation needs.
So specifically to that environment then, for GM or Caroline, you can talk about what other companies are interested. How do we create that environment that makes you not only want to come here and economically pursue profit and development, but also to experiment and test and do your spiral development in our state as opposed to others?
Well, I think you have to demonstrate to us that you're interested and want. You know, the Department of Transportation, the Federal Department of Transportation, announced in early December that they were going to award a $40 million grant to any city that submitted. They would select a certain city that it was an open competition for cities of mid-size, 180,000 to 800,000 in population, to put a concept on the table that say, this is how we think we can use these technologies to make our city better and our quality of life better. And the interesting thing is they're asking for submissions by February the 4th. Which is an amazing turnaround. But then they'll select like 5 finalists, and I think give them $100,000 and 2 more months to refine their proposal. But we're very interested in that, and we're very interested in working with cities to come up with innovative and creative proposals that we can partner in to make those things happen. So if you know of a city that might be interested, feel free to have them contact us. I think we are looking to the public policy leaders of the state to see that the atmosphere is right for innovation and creativity. We're very proud of our connection to Texas. We've been here for a long time. We have over 8,000 employees in the state of Texas, including here in Austin, where we have a very large and growing IT innovation center, where a lot of these innovations, frankly, are going to come from. We're really excited about that. We employ a lot of young and creative folks in that center. So, Texas is already a home for us. And I think it will be very natural for us to see Texas as a place where we can innovate and create.
I have to put a shameless plug in right now, but there is a city in the state known as Arlington, Texas, which just happened to be from, that starting back in 1951 embraced General Motors.
Absolutely.
And by General Motors coming there, and it's now one of their best plants around, that led to a number of major road developments in the Metroplex. And so the technology of that day was a major catalyst and continues to be as it has evolved over the last 60 years plus.
Well, and it's just what was spoken to earlier. It's the nexus of the population, of the living centers, of the industry, and of the urban environment that enables all of that innovation to happen. And your innovation center is where?
Right here in Austin.
I know.
Yeah.
In case we didn't know. And Austin is applying to that
Great.
Opportunity. And I don't know if there's others, but they contacted us right before the holidays and are moving out. Caroline.
Technology companies are invested here because of our regulatory frameworks that encourage innovation.
Yeah.
We are a center of innovation for that reason. We've got a good workforce, but it really is the regulatory frameworks that bring them here. It's not an accident that Google is testing their cars here in Austin and not in California. And the more California keeps passing bad regulations, the more innovations like that we're going to see in Texas. So it really is, we need to find ways at the state and the city and the county level to embrace these innovations and not be afraid of them and say, let's not regulate something out of business before it even exists. Let's find a way to harness that innovation so that Texas can lead.
That's something I mentioned too when I hear Governor Perry talk about the Texas Miracle. Part of my little stump speech is we created this. I mean, the people who came before me the last 15, 20 years, it's not a miracle when good people make good decisions. We've put ourselves in this position. My job is to take it, make it better and stronger for those that come next. But I don't know that I would use the word miracle as much as I would some really responsible decision making by elected officials, by community, by private industry, have built everything that we enjoy here today. We can continue to do some wonderful things with it, but I don't think it's a miracle.
So I'm going to try and scoop Consumer Electronics Show. Is there any great little tidbit you're going to reveal tomorrow or next week
Well, actually,
that we can scoop them on right now?
Well, we did the Lyft announcement yesterday. Today we're unveiling the Bolt, which is our newest electric car. This is a car that's going to be in production by the end of next year. It's going to be produced here in the United States, unfortunately not in Texas, but here in the U.S. It's an electric car, and just to show you, how quickly this technology is coming on. So GM produced the Volt, which was our first electric car in production, and it put it on the road in 2011. It had a range of 30 miles on battery power. This next generation Volt, which was just introduced last year, doubled that to 60 miles on battery power. The Bolt, which will be produced this year, it's an all-electric car, will have a range of over 200 miles on electric power, and it will cost less than $30,000 all in, and it'll be a 5-passenger car. This technology is moving very quickly. The cost of these technologies is coming down as we get to scale, and it's going to be very exciting.
And to the point, we're all in this together. For the electric vehicles to continue to be viable for the longer range, in Texas, 200 miles, you could still be nowhere after doing. It's really what partnership is required to get those charging stations. We've got companies like members of TechDOT called ChargePoint getting those charging stations up, but that really is going to require cooperation across all those jurisdictions.
And we've looked at that in the last legislature somewhat from the TECQ and as well as other alternative fuel solutions and promoting all of those and creating that infrastructure, which is not necessarily TechDOT's mission, but it complements what we need to be able to provide.
I'll say, again, as an appropriator, like the subcommittee that I chair, we have 42 state agencies. The crossover between those agencies exists. The technology is changing so rapidly for us. What we're investing in technology of TCEQ specifically, so much technology there that deals with congestion and air monitoring and all these different things that affect federal regulations on the amount of emissions we're putting out. Tremendous amount of technology that's coming down so quickly for us that agencies are presenting these legislative appropriation requests with some pretty new items for us. And so we're looking at some of these newer technologies for the first time, and we're deciding where they fit in with our priorities. Again, I'll say that they are expensive up front, but what is my ROI in years 2, 3, 4, and 5? And then the question is, 2, 3, 4 years later, does the legislature then go back and hold the agency accountable for, did you meet your numbers? I think we have some work to do there, but it's changing so quickly on us that as appropriators, we're sitting there paying for very new items. And it's exciting, and you also kind of look at it, okay, is this going to work or not? But I'm a fan of, we're going to try it, and we're going to look at it, and we're going to keep our options open, and we're going to see what works. Now, you do take from other states and from other agencies what they've done well, maybe what they tried that didn't work, but I got to tell you, going around the country doing these kind of conversations, it's Texas. We're on the forefront of a lot of this. When you go listen to members from other states, legislators talk about, we did this one conference, I guess, in San Francisco, and if there was a word cloud over 3 days, the biggest word in that word cloud would be Texas. Everyone talked about Texas. The guy from California right next to me, a young guy, mid-30s, nonstop about how they're losing all of this business to Texas. We had some great conversations offline a little bit later, but it's how we do things here, and people are looking to us to lead. And quite frankly, with the diversity of Texas and the size of Texas, a lot of other states have told us, if Texas can pull this off, then so can we. Because it's so difficult here with this sheer scope of what we're doing, with the diversity from El Paso to Plano to Galveston to San Antonio, people look to Texas for these kinds of things. And I love that you go to these conferences around the country and you're seen as the model. And that what we're able to do and the decisions we do here, again, it's a partnership with the private industry, it's a partnership with our local municipalities, but what we've built here is pretty incredible. Now we say that here and we're kind of used to saying it. I am telling you, when you travel, you hear it more and more about how we have modeled so much of the technologies. I was in Mexico City and the Ministry of Energy down there. They've taken large portions of our statute on oil and gas and have made it part of their national energy plan. It's kind of nice, man. The fact that this country of Mexico is looking to how we do things and what have we developed, and they're making that part of their national plan. So, it's not by accident that we enjoy all the things we enjoy here. We just need to have the foresight to keep going, and not to stop it and be happy with where we are. A lot of people love to say how great Texas is and what a great place we are. Well, then when you come to the legislature, then help us continue that, right? It doesn't do any good to say how wonderful Texas is and then vote in ways that stifles that. We're here for a reason, and that's the kind of thing that I think a lot of us in the legislature want to continue to grow, expand, and just make it that much better.
So continue to be awesome.
Continue to be awesome. Hashtag Larry Gonzalez 52.
Exactly. Caroline, then, you've touched on it a couple times, and I'll give you this opportunity. So what is the mission, or what are the focus areas of TechNet, and then how can people be more involved?
So TechNet, we are focused on making sure that the next generation of technology companies start in Texas, stay in Texas, and grow in Texas. So it's advocating for smart public policy. Part of that was the creation of a House Innovation and Technology Caucus, which Representative Gonzalez is on the executive committee. It's making sure that we talk to the legislature in a proactive way about these issues as they come, so that we are not trying to deal with it legislatively. It's how can we be proactive to incentivize the development of technology. And so getting involved, it's really helping to educate yourself about these issues, learn about these technologies as they develop, and help us think through ways to good smart policy on the books.
And do you have regular meetings that are open to the public? Or?
We do. We do a series called Tech Talks, usually at the Capitol. Last month we did one on the future of technology in transportation. So it's a series of events every 6 to 8 weeks. If you're interested in being on the mailing list for our Tech Talks, please send me an email at cjoiner@technet.org.
So before we wrap with some bigger, visionary questions, I want to, play the sober judge and ask you the sobering question, and each one of you can answer differently. But really, technology and innovation are scary things to many people. It's, not everybody's an early adopter. So what are you most concerned? You're a user too. We different demographics, generations, and we certainly know, or many of you speak to your user communities or constituents. What are your concerns, or what are your users' concerns, or your constituents' concerns? What are the biggest risks that you want us to be focusing on? And Representative Gonzalez, I'll start with you.
Well, I'll start with this. There is the policy of things, and there is the politics of things. We can have the best policy conversation you want to have, but understand at the end of the day, there's a political decision to be made as well. And so when you're on the House floor, it's great to have this think tank and white paper discussion about how great technology is and what it means, but the political reality is there are some things that we can't quite do yet. That may be good or not so good depending on where you are, but it isn't just the theoretical, right? At some point, myself and 149 of my colleagues are making the decision. And so it's great to have the conversation, but to Caroline's point with TechNet and any other association that the audience is a member of, you have to be engaged. You have to come talk to us. You have to let us know you are the experts, right? You're the experts. For me, I will tie it back around to communication. It's understanding that ultimately my colleagues and I make these decisions with necessary input from the stakeholders, necessary input from the constituents. We need to know what you know. You need to share with us what you know. You need to share with us what we should and should not be doing, and feed us as much information as possible going forward. I'll tell you, to answer your question more directly, you asked specifically about something that may scare us. I will drop this in the grease. I haven't heard it quite here today yet, but even when it comes to vehicles, I'm getting more and more information on privacy laws as it relates to the data that your car is producing. Well, here comes a door that didn't exist a few years ago, but your cars can do all these incredible things and capture incredible data. Now we're having privacy questions over that. Very interesting. And again, I'm not the expert on this. We're still working our way through a lot of this, but that's something we weren't talking about just a few years ago. But technology allows us to do all these incredible, wonderful things, however, what's waiting for us on the other side of that door that we were unaware of or unprepared for, and that's where you start to see some of the hesitation from some of the things. But the best thing we can do is to communicate with the innovators and research and design teams to help us understand what those risks are and how it's going to work, because it's coming. And you can't just pretend it's not coming. The technology touches every single part of our lives. You can't just put your head in the sand and think it's not going to happen, because it is. We need to craft it in such a way that when it does happen, it's beneficial and allows for the safety of our citizens and for the ease of transportation, and from the commerce side, the export and importing of our products, so that we can have great jobs and a great economy that feeds everything else that we do. But it's a very long conversation involving many moving pieces that we, the body, needs to know from this room how that's going to best work.
Caroline?
So many of these innovations will disrupt existing industries. They're customer facing, and there is no precedent for them in the market, and there's no precedent for them in the regulations. So the instinct sometimes is to try to solve a problem that doesn't yet exist. So that's our biggest challenge is there's no precedent on this. It's customer facing, it's new, it's scary. Privacy concerns come up. So where is that line between protecting the consumer and allowing the innovation to continue? And so, as Representative Gonzalez said, our challenge there is to continue to be in conversation with policymakers so that they understand when writing policy there are unintended consequences. And we want to make sure that things are carefully crafted so that the innovations can continue, because this is a lot of these things are without precedent. Look at what the TNCs are facing here in Austin, trying to be regulated as a taxi company. They're not a taxi company, they're a technology company. So it's how do you take these disruptive technologies and allow them to continue, especially when the market loves them?
Yeah, I think I would agree with the previous panelists. Before I came to General Motors, I spent 26 years in the world of telecom. And one of my experiences not too long ago, the early 1990s, I spent 3 years trying to get voicemail approved by a regulatory commission in a state. And today, that sounds awfully funny. But back then, it wasn't. And when you're at the very beginning of the adoption curve of these kind of transformative technologies, fear, uncertainty, and doubt is an incredible political tool that can be used to try to prevent change from occurring or slow it down. And we are dealing with new types of issues. Privacy is a very big issue. We certainly have concerns. We want our customers to feel that they can trust the relationship we have with them. So we want them to know that their privacy is being protected. Cybersecurity is another issue that we're dealing with now that's certainly new for our industry. So we will have these issues come up, and we look forward to the dialogue and dealing with them together.
Commissioner?
Yeah, I'm going to take it to a more basic level that I think is important on the connectivity issue that's really facing us. And that is that we're getting enough data and enough ways to electronically measure things. For those of you that don't know, I'm very bullish on performance measures and metrics. I've watched that work in the private and the public sector to improve performance. But the challenge has always been getting the right kind of data, and particularly when you're talking about transportation issues. Well, that's rapidly changing, and I think that led by the authorship of Representative Ron Simmons and the leadership of Chairman Joe Pickett and Chairman Robert Nichols and Speaker Strauss, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, and Governor Abbott, we have been presented a tremendous opportunity. I look at things that others might consider a challenge. HB 20, for example, probably all of you know that number. It gives us an opportunity, and because of the requirement that we put some performance measures and metrics in place, and the technology exists to help us really evaluate the effectiveness, not just how the pavement's doing, but how it's performing economically, et cetera, that we're going to have a real opportunity and a challenge to get that in place in the next few years. But I think if we do, we can make smarter, more informed decisions relative to the transportation investments we do make, and technology is driving that.
I'll throw one. We're not going to leave people behind. I think it's important to note we focus on urbanization in our corridors And a lot of people see, there's a lot of return on investment in those areas, but we have to make sure that we're addressing the entirety of the state with our innovation and technology, and that those things that are beneficial to the rural areas or to other areas, that they're employed there too, and not just in the most obvious locations. Looks like I'm almost basically out of time, but I'm going to ask Ray if we want to turn it over to the audience questions, or I can ask him one last wrap-up question.
We have one question from Twitter.
It comes from D. Scheipel, @D. How does TechDOT become truly multimodal when the Highway Trust Fund is restrictive on what projects can be funded?
Well, that's obviously the multi-billion-dollar question for Texas. I think that I mentioned earlier about the high-speed rail effort, and it's not my place to judge will it not be successful. As I said, I hope that and I think we have given it the opportunity to fail, which means a chance to succeed, of course. And if it does, I think that will be a catalyst perhaps that will have us have more interest in that, at least in perhaps funneling federal efforts to support those transportation projects that come out of it. I mentioned the fact of really getting into the ports. I think that ports and aviation are tremendous economic drivers for the state of Texas and for the communities they serve in. I think it's going to require communities also, not just the industry, but the communities themselves where these major ports or potential major ports exist to be more proactive in working with us. And if we get some efforts like that and also prove up the economic worth of those investments that we are able to make, then you can someday see that world shifting and changing. Right now, it's definitely focused on the highways, and we have no authority to invest in some of these others beyond the federal dollars, but I think that could change in time.
Well, I think, speaking as the appropriator for Article 7, we need buy-in from my colleagues. We need to sell what we're thinking to our colleagues. There's an education here to teach them more about just asphalt as opposed to what we can do with rail and air and water. We got to sell it. And I think with TechDOT being up for sunset review again, I think we have the opportunity to use the sunset process to better arm me, prepare me, give me the data I need to go make that sell to the body. We have an incredible process here that asks if TechDOT is meeting the mission. Is it meeting the mission efficiently? And what areas of how they work provide better service? Okay. Then what I'm asking Sunset to do is to give us the information we need through this process that I can learn more to then go teach. Okay, guys, if we dredge and if we expand and if we have the connectivity between our ports, and if something can be dropped off in Beaumont then hits I-10 and goes this way, does that remove traffic from I-35, right? That's what I need. I need the practical, what does it mean if I can dock something along the coast and relieve I-35? I-35 splits the city of Round Rock, my hometown. I see it every single day. So what if we move product all the way around and up the coast? Those are the kinds of answers that I'm going to need to get in the next year. That better enables me to sell something other than asphalt. That enables me to make the argument for ports and for rail, and then do we connect via rail? Do we connect via asphalt? How do we connect all these different ports? Those are all the questions I have going forward. I hope to get a lot of that at least discussed and talked about during the process. This is a huge undertaking, though. This is not going to happen in 2017 legislative session. But what we can do is use the next year to introduce this conversation that I don't think has happened a whole lot. We're so focused on roads that I think that by using other modes of transportation, we can relieve the congestion. The technologies that exist in the other modes of transportation, which we haven't discussed here today, but the technologies that exist there can also help us relieve congestion on the roads. It isn't just pouring asphalt. We can do other things. Now, the asphalt and rail plays a huge part in the connectivity. I'm just envisioning a plan that uses different scenarios to solve a congestion problem on the roads. The answer is not necessarily having to build more roads. I think there are other things we can do So to answer the question is, how do we get there? I need buy-in. But I need to be able to sell it to get the buy-in. And that's why I'm asking for you guys, the audience, to help us make those cases. Help us make the case that there are other modes of transportation here that can greatly benefit how we do things here in Texas. But the experts are sitting out there, and that's what we're looking for.